Hello, boys and girls of Credit Union Land, and welcome to episode 19 of the CUInsight Experience. My name is Randy Smith. I am one of the co-founders and the publisher of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest from around the credit union community. I get to pick their brains and hopefully find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Mr. Bryan Clagett. Bryan is the Chief Marketing Officer at Geezeo. He's also a Forbes contributor and a member of the Forbes Communications Council. If you're a follower of Bryan on the socials, if you're not, you really should be. He is an active part in the conversation about credit unions and banking, fintech, and really all things digital transformation. Someone I have long viewed as a thought leader in our space. He's also quite the amateur drone pilot. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to ask what his neighbors think about the eye in the sky flying all around their neighborhood. But I must say, man, does he get some good videos. For years, Bryan has been one of my go-to people when I have questions on all things fintech or digital disruption. He's a longtime contributor and a fan favorite of the CUInsight community. I knew this conversation was going to be a blast, and I knew it would be full of nuggets that we would all be able to take home with us. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Mr. Bryan Clagett. Enjoy. Bryan, thank you so very much for being on the show. I was looking forward to this conversation. Obviously, you and I have talked quite a bit over the years, and I knew we were going to just have a great time doing this.
Oh, you know it. You know it for sure.
So, hey, I just want to jump right into the questions. When I think of past conversations that you and I have had, there were so many different directions that, we could go, whether it was talking about the fintech and the pace of change or digital marketing, even the communication side of things. So I wanted to jump right off the get-go into a few top of mind questions for me. First, what do you see? I mean, very broad, is the biggest disruption that you're seeing that's happening to financial services that maybe you don't think credit unions are taking seriously enough?
Well, when I think of disruption, I think traditionally people think about the technology itself. And I think what's happening is the disruption's being driven by the consumer. Consumers are evolving. As new technology is being deployed, expectations are rising. So everybody at this point is kind of expecting more from their service provider, be it, a retailer or a financial institution. And that's something that's going to continue to increase. Technology is going to be deployed quicker, faster. It's going to be more efficient. And as a result, people are going to say, hey, why can't my credit union do that? Why can't my bank do that? That's going to be a challenge, but that's also probably where most of the excitement is. Because frankly, in my opinion, and I think a lot of fintech folks feel this way, and I hope a lot of credit union people do too, there's never been a better time to be in financial services. These truly are remarkable times, all politics aside.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find these topics so exciting, right? Like how much it's changed. It kind of leads me to the next question that I have. Geezeo, as a fintech, has been around now, during so much of this change that's going on. CUInsight 10 years in, the space looks so much different than it did the early conversations that you and I were having when we first met. What is Geezeo doing to help credit unions? And also, how do you guys keep pace with just keep up with that pace of change?
Yep. So we're now 11 years in, going in on 12 years. So, we're the world's oldest startup. We have just under 50 employees now. So I wouldn't really say we're a startup. We're rather, we're maturing. Even I'm maturing, believe it or not, at the age of 57. So, we have always been big believers in empowerment, and our message has always been one, how can we support the position of advocacy that credit unions are trying to create? Credit unions state they want to be the financial partners of life of the members they serve. So what can we bring to the table? How can we bring more horsepower? And what we do is we bring more horsepower to the digital banking experience. So over the past 10 years, we've evolved from what is a simple PFM, white label PFM solution, which is, offering that budgeting functionality, that cash flow, that awareness to how people spend or what they can do to save. And now we're more of a critical partner with the credit unions, and financial institutions, the core processors, and the digital banking solutions, because now we're processing, augmenting, and storing millions of transactions. So that's why we've become this really viewed as a data partner. And then we're leveraging our API, what we call responsive tiles, which are the messaging strategies that occur within digital banking to make digital banking much more engaging. Years ago, you probably heard me talk about engagement banking kind of as a theme. And frankly, it's still a theme. I think it's a theme that everyone's now kind of embracing. It's almost become second nature. So it's leveraging data and turning that data into something that the consumer can act on and providing contextual messages. That's where I think we bring a lot of value to the credit union space.
Could you go a little deeper into what do you mean by contextual messaging?
I'll give you an example. So if you're in a digital banking platform, you're jumping in there real quick to check a balance or maybe move money from point A to point B. Maybe it's to pay off an installment loan or something like that. We're able to look at the kind of transactions you're doing and how often you're doing them. And then we're able to provide very specific messaging that's relevant to you. Not unlike what happened in the old days when, you went in to see the teller. They get used to seeing you. They understand why you're there. They anticipate your needs. Well, now that we're seeing a shift more toward digital, obviously, across all industries, it's important that kind of engagement still occurs. There's this personalization that needs to happen within the digital banking ecosystem. So everything is built upon data and then messaging strategies around that. Being contextual means that I'm simply personalizing it and I'm in tune with your needs, or more importantly, in tune with your future needs.
Would you guys consider yourselves a data company at this point?
We do. We do. And so many companies really are.
Absolutely.
Data touches every industry. It's remarkably important. Whether, you're Boeing and going through what you're going through right now, too much data not being, presented to the pilots at the right time, or not being able to, bring my own decision in, overriding the data, for example. So, or, if you're a retailer, or if you're, Apple, who's looking at that relationship with Goldman. This is very much about data. Last week, there was a discussion on Twitter about, 5G and what's happening with 5G. My question is, what about the telcos? Will telcos get into the fintech space? Because think of the data they have. They have all the messaging data. They know what's going on. The databases they have are huge. Every industry has data. And the scary thing about it is just about any industry could get into financial services to some way or another.
Yeah, we saw it coming out this fall will be Apple getting into that space. I was talking to Doug Layton from Visa a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about the importance of like that idea of top of wallet, of being like top of, we were talking about top of Amazon, top of, making sure that that's where you are. And it was interesting. I was talking to Jill afterwards about it, and she talked about years ago, way before Apple was ever getting into the payment space, that at the credit union she worked for out in Oregon, they did a promotion trying to noticing that people were, iTunes, basically. So if you made 3 iTunes transaction on your debit card, you got $5 back or something like that, because they wanted to be the iTunes card, right? And I'm like, how, now that there's Apple Pay and everything else, how smart did that look? So, what is it that you're, most excited about in the advancement of financial technologies as you look forward?
I think what excites me the most is that it's allowing us to be more in tune with needs. Again, it's very data driven, a lot of this technology. Granted, the technology is often centered around delivery, but it's leveraging data to deliver a more appropriate experience or product. The problem historically has been that financial services, and this includes credit unions, obviously, it has been very much a commodity trap. The differentiation has relied upon rates. Now, granted, the rate environment's changed a little bit, so we are allowing ourselves to have a little more price differentiation at this point. But that's not a differentiation you want to rely on. To me, it's the experience that you build. And the credit unions have been very proud of the fact that they try to market and build a better, quote unquote, experience. Now they actually can. They're going to have to do it, though, increasingly on digital. That's going to be, I think, the biggest opportunity. So seeing that change, I think, is exciting for me.
It leads me into the next question. Do you view digital and technology in general as an equalizer for credit unions, or is it a deterrent, I guess?
No, it depends. That's a loaded question. It depends on the culture, it depends on leadership, depends upon how you view or think of technology. It certainly can. I mean, technology has to be very much part of the credit union DNA. All right, you don't have the ability in the credit union industry to rely upon a traditional retail delivery network. And I believe that's an advantage. Number one, you don't have all that capital tied up in physical presence. And number two, it's forced you to think of technology a little differently. When I went from the banking world to the credit union world in the late 90s, I saw a better digital experience even back in the 90s at Affinity Federal Credit Union that I did in the large bank I came from. So again, I think the mindset is actually there that technology is a friend and not a foe. However, there are threats that are out there, but it's going to come down to leadership and their interest and desire to invest in technology, and also risk. You're going to have to take some risk and not simply be the close followers. Sometimes you're going to have to be leaders, and it's a changing world that's getting very exciting.
Do you see, I guess this is kind of a scratch my own itch question right here. Is the stumbling block for a credit union that wants to make this move? Is it a leadership stumbling block, or is it a governance stumbling? I mean, or is it just maybe needing to be educated at this point?
Well, I think it's all the above. I mean, the stumbling blocks are many. I mean, there's steps that we have to climb. The regulatory is an unknown. Capital is another issue. Technology is not cheap. It costs money. It's an investment. If I were a board member at this point at a credit union, I'd be asking, how are we preparing to invest in our future generations of members, and how much of our dollars need to go toward technology? And do we need to invest in R&D, for example? Credit unions and banks traditionally don't invest in research and development. They aren't really casting. Now, they got organizations like Filene that do that, and obviously partners like NAFQ and CUNA can help them do that. But the credit union mentality and the leadership mentality does have to change quite a bit.
Yeah, that's the changing times, but to me, I find it exciting. So
it is. It's a tremendous opportunity. I mean, that's the part that's most exciting. It's not banking as usual.
Yeah.
Okay. The chore of banking sucks. It's remarkably boring. And all the credit union folks and bankers out there that think it's exciting, I don't know what's wrong with you. It's not. What's exciting about it is working with people, engaging with people, and finding ways to leverage technology to empower people. That's how you become an advocate. That's the dynamic and exciting part.
I agree with you. I love that. I want to switch gears a little bit and kind of get off fintech and talk a little bit more about digital marketing. A place that I've always respected your presence. So, and we'll link to all the places that people can find you and your thought leadership. You've been a longtime contributor to the CUInsight community. You write for Forbes. I mean, it's pretty awesome that you share your knowledge base with the world. When it comes to marketing and communications in 2019, do you have a few tips that you think every credit union should be doing today? And maybe more importantly, are there things that you see credit unions doing that you just are like, stop it, you don't need to do that?
Yes to both. And I'll just say, the key here, I think, for credit union marketers now and in the future is that they leverage technology, they leverage data, they leverage all these emerging channels as means to actually talk with members, not just talk at them. Traditionally, what I see in traditional advertising is, boasting. Look at me, I'm great. It's not focused on the consumer. We're not truly consumer-centric in financial services. Your members are not idiots. They know you offer checking, or share drafts. They know you offer loans, and increasingly they know you offer mortgages. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Stop communicating the stuff that people typically know. You're feeding that commodity trap. The real issue is, what do you know of your members? What do you do differently to impact your members' financial lives? Financial services, to me, is the epitome of the service industry. We're talking about, the lives and the futures of households here. This isn't like being Target and selling a pair of shoes or selling cosmetics. This is about people's financial wellness, people's livelihood. And you don't get there and convince people you have a strong brand by bragging about your mortgage rates or bragging about your car loan availability or a feature in your checking account. You need to have a brand that's built around a differentiation. And to me, it's going to be built on conversation. Marketing needs to be a conversational discipline. And it's something that that translates into the sales effort as well. Okay. Be relevant, listen, and respond to me and give me what I need, or tell me what you think I need, and try to anticipate my need. That's another thing.
I couldn't agree with you more. To me, so much of the digital side is it's allowing conversation, right? Like, so what you were saying earlier about, that stop shouting at, like, this is what we have, or this is what we think you need. Like, have the conversation. There's so many channels to do it out there, and your members are there. So I'm with you there. Are there tools or anything that you use or that you think credit unions should be using from that digital marketing standpoint that maybe you haven't seen widespread adoption yet?
Well, I mean, I'm a big believer in, obviously, social media and data. I mean, I think those worlds can collide. Social media is just simply a new form of media. It's a form of engagement that everyone should leverage. There should be no question that there's value in it. Depends, again, how you use it. Too frequently, I see people using it, shouting those rates. Hey, look at me, I'm on Twitter. We have great rates. Okay, that's great. All 36 of your followers just heard that. Do they care? Probably not. Are you listening? That is the key. Are you listening on social media? Are you observing? Are you monitoring your competition? Are you looking for that soft underbelly your competition has? So you can, I hate to say it, take advantage of that so you can drive a point of differentiation. That, to me, is very important. I use social just in monitoring the environment that I work within. I also use it as a tool, and I'll talk about it later, about how I can stay engaged with my customer base or my client base, and also the media and influencers and friends. And in many cases, they've all become friends.
Yeah, it's all merged together.
Yeah, it is. Social media became an equalizer. But you have to have a certain level of energy. You have to bring some energy to the market. This is not a passive industry. You can't just sit back and hope for the best. You actually have to get in there and kind of own it. Yeah, I think financial services is becoming even more a people business today than it's ever been.
Yeah, we had a call at CUInsight with the whole team yesterday, and part of it was the engagement side, right? Where it's like, answer people, be a part of the conversation. Let's, you know what I mean? Like, this is, all of us can do this. We don't have to just have one voice out there, basically, right? So,
well, and it changes the dynamic. I think of, Amanda, when I hear Amanda's at a show, or you're at a show, I seek you out. I mean, it's like, I want to be with you. You guys are fun. You guys are creative. You guys are interesting people. And I'm hoping the feeling's mutual. I mean, absolutely. Life is short. Let's find a way that we can engage and be genuine and, have dialogue. We all learn from that.
We were talking about that just recently. I had a call with the folks over at NAFQ Services, and they're like, Amanda's not on the call. And then at the exact same time, they're like, oh no, she's at our strategic growth conference. We saw it on social, right? Like, I mean, that she was there, and there were pictures with her and others there. And, so.
and then we hear from Dan Berger, who's he and his daughter are down in the Keys, and she's scuba diving and found, you ready for this? And I learned this from social media, and I know Dan too. She found a pair of Geezeo branded sunglasses
while scuba diving.
And he posted, if you look on his Facebook post, he sent an email over to Sean Ward, our CEO, and he's like, you're not going to believe what I found. And I saw that email, and then I went on to on the Facebook. I'm like, all right, Dan, tell me the story. And then he posted a picture of it. So what are the odds? Again, I mean,
I remember seeing them down there fishing and doing that, but I must have missed that post. That's fantastic. I love that.
The only thing you caught was some Geezeo.
Yeah, there you go. So those pass out sunglasses, you never know where they're going to end up, right? From the conference space or whatever it happens to be. So Bryan, I want to switch gears a little bit here. I know we're going to continue through this conversation, but I'd like to talk to you about leadership and life hacks. You mentioned earlier you got your start in a bank, and I know your first credit union, as you mentioned, was Affinity FCU in New Jersey. What was the first gig in financial services space, and what inspired you to make this industry your career?
So my first official financial services job was actually working for the Gallup organization. I was George Gallup's polling service. So we sold a lot of syndicated research, and I was a field manager. I recruited people to go out there and do the intercept surveys and stuff. A lot of our stuff was financial services oriented. And that got me a little interested. And then, to be very frank, my father was friends with a guy that was a CEO of a large bank in New Jersey, introduced me. And I was kind of hooked at that point. He was trying to explain what he was doing. Plus, they were going through a merger, and that was kind of exciting. Remember, this is the 80s. We all thought we were Alex P. Keaton, had our three-piece suits on. And so one thing led to another. I got the job.
You wanted to be Gordon Gekko?
Well, not quite. But I definitely wanted to be Alex P. Keaton.
All right.
And so I got the job. My first job was I ran the marketing program for 88 retail branches in the state of New Jersey. Yeah, that was exciting. And then we went through some mergers, and I got involved in the M&A business. I did that until the early 90s, and I ended up at Summit Bank, which went through some mergers and ultimately sold to Fleet. And then I stumbled upon this credit union world. I didn't know much about it, to be very frank with you. So I don't remember if it was a recruiter or an ad that I'd seen, but it was for AT&T's credit union. So my dad was an AT&T exec formerly, retired in 85. And I said, what do you know about this? He goes, I never heard of it. I never heard of that credit union. I didn't know that AT&T or Lucent or Western Electric, all part of the Bell system, had any credit unions, which pointed to kind of an issue, to be honest with you. One thing led to another. I was impressed with John Fenton and Mark Cochran and Dave Snodgrass, the management team at the time. They were doing great things, and they continue to do great things. And I noticed how they were very technology savvy. And, Dave was a former NCUA. He was NCUA auditor, and Mark and John were former bankers, just like me. So I was like, all right, these guys are kind of like me. They see what the dark side is doing, if it were, and they're learning from that. And I was challenged by that. So that's really what got me hooked. I got involved in I'd always been involved in product and the marketing side of financial services. And, as time went on, digital came up. I was at Summit very involved in the Prodigy Network, which was a cash management venture between IBM and Sears. Now, there's the dark side. And then, at Affinity, Paul Fiore was our former COO at Affinity when I was AT&T employees, and he became the founder or co-founder of Digital Insight. So we were one of the first DI clients, and so I kind of got the digital banking hook back in '96, I think it was. And one thing led to another. In 2009, it ended up in the true dark side, which people call the vendor side. And it's been exciting. I've never regretted any decisions I've made, and I love working with the clients, and I think that having that financial services background that included the banking side, the vendor side, also the ad agency side, it really gives me kind of a different viewpoint of things.
Has the inspiration changed at all? You just mentioned like switching from inside the credit union or the financial institution to outside and then serving them.
Yeah, I mean, it's neat because I have a bigger audience now. I have the opportunity to influence more people. I can tell people, what I've learned from my mistakes and the better decisions I've made. And I can also share what other people are doing because I hear what other people are doing. So, there's already a lot of sharing and caring that's happening in the credit union world. I'll be honest, it's happening throughout the banking industry. I mean, there's a remarkable community out there. And when you're a vendor, if it were, or a partner, as I prefer to call it, you're able to establish relationships with people, and they say, I hear what you're doing. I have another client that needs to hear what you're doing. Can I put the two of you together? And so that is the part that's kind of exciting. Whereas when I was working in, for a bank or for a credit union, we were in our own little world. And while we were going to conferences and while we were doing, a lot of collaboration with vendors and everything, you didn't have the ability to really speak from a pulpit like we have today. That's part of the company DNA as well. We're very engaged with the market we serve, and that's what makes it exciting. And that's why I like getting up every morning.
You mentioned being able to share your experiences, whether they're the wins or the mistakes that you made. Is there a memorable failure that you can think of in your career that when you look back on it, you're like, you know what? I'm glad it worked out that way because it led to future opportunity.
Yeah, and not just future opportunity, but maybe a lesson learned. So when I was at Core States, it was about a $24 billion bank in Philadelphia, Delaware Valley, in New Jersey. And we had hired, I was working with Van Sant Dugdale at the time, a large agency, and we were looking for a spokesperson. And we were a mainline Philadelphia bank. So the mainline Philadelphia in the late 80s was very, stodgy and preppy, we'll call it. Again, that Alex P. Keaton thing with a better haircut. So we needed a spokesman. The agency came and said, hey, we recommend Edward Herman. Ed Herman, actually died, I think, a year or two ago. Nice guy. He played FDR in the 70s in several miniseries, had a great reputation, kind of fit the role. So, I went to bat with the agency. It's like, this is the perfect guy. It looks like our customer base out there in mainline Philadelphia and in Princeton, New Jersey, all the markets we were going after. We were very deposit oriented at the time, and we were also looking to grow our investment business. So he was perfect. Well, a couple months, did some filming with him, paid a $1 million a year contract to the guy, shot probably 3 or 4 different commercials on location at branches, which are expensive to do. CEO calls me up. And he's like, hey, you got a couple minutes? Can you come by? Well, coming by meant I had to leave my office in New Jersey and drive to Philadelphia. So coming by was an hour trip. So I get down there, and he's like, did you hear about the movie The Lost Boys? I go, no, I don't. He goes, well, you may want to look at this. So he shows me this newspaper clipping that apparently a board director sent him. And it's a picture of Ed Herman in The Lost Boys. The Lost Boys was a movie about vampirism, I guess you'd call it. Kiefer Sutherland, some of those guys are in it, some of the Brat Packers. And the lead vampire was Ed Herman. So our spokesperson was now a blood-sucking vampire. So I had some splaining to do.
You're like, it's for Halloween, right? Like,
number one, why didn't I know? Number two, why didn't the agency know? And I had I was pretty much called on the carpet for that. So that taught me a lesson that you really need to be thorough in just about everything you do. That there's certainly a risk, and it also taught me a thing or two about leadership, because that CEO knew that I couldn't control it, that it was kept from me. I wasn't expected to know everything. So he offered some compassion, but he also had to make sure that he was able to go back to the board and say, yeah, I reamed out the marketing guy pretty well.
That's a funny story.
I mean, it was a lesson learned.
Absolutely. I feel like this was a question actually I was really looking forward to asking you. And I mean, you mentioned earlier in the conversation about being able to have a kind of a pulse on the broader industry now in your position. Is there a current belief that's held by credit unions that you think will significantly change even in the foreseeable future?
That's really hard to answer. I think the common belief that we will see change is that, and maybe it's already begun, the branch network is not our future. And maybe they've got a competitive advantage because they don't have that investment. I think the credit union in the future will understand that they are a financial services platform, if it were. And, kind of like a financial services collaborator or hub. And they will be powered by ideally best in class products and services that may or may not be products or services that they manufacture or build, that they're focused on the experience and anticipating needs. Again, they're powering, in my opinion, or should be, the household finances today and into the future. Their message should be one of financial wellness. And if I can match you as a credit union with the people that can do that best, that can help you based upon your specific needs, then I think that I'll be at a real advantage. Truly, then I will be a trusted partner. I won't be a trusted partner because I have a great checking account. I won't be a trusted partner because I have the lowest loan rates. That's all part of it, but I need to be a trusted partner because I'm viewed truly as a trusted partner in building my household's financial wellness or my future.
To switch gears to more the leadership style, or the leadership questions, I should say. Do you have or how would you describe your leadership style? And to add to that, how would your team describe it?
Well, I think they'd view me as someone who's probably talking too much. I'm fairly an open book. I'm a big believer in transparency. Hiccups will occur in a business relationship, be it with clients and or with your employees. And I don't want anyone to be afraid to speak their mind or share a concern, even if it's something they don't agree with me on, because that's how we all learn. So I think collaboration is like the first kind of thing. I view myself as a coach. I'm big on mentorship. I actually participate in a mentorship program. I've been a mentor to, 4 Fortune 500 individuals over the last 2 years. It's through a program called Everwise. I'm not paid. It's something I do because I believe in it. We all learn lessons through life. Why not, share what we've learned from those things? So, I'm an open book, collaborative, probably don't listen enough, something I'm working on. I don't give the appearance I'm listening. That's the key. And I like to solve problems. I want people to come to me if they have a problem, and I'll tell them it'll be all right. We'll work together to solve it one way or another.
Do you have a hack that you could share with our listeners if you run into that problem, how you bust through to the other side? Like if you just feel like you're hitting your head against a wall on something and you got to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, and that happens all the time, especially in today's fast-paced world. I mean, I spend a lot of time reading. So if I'm getting bogged down in a topic or a subject, or if I'm overstressed on a project, or even if it's something going on in my personal life, I turn to the internet, I turn to my friends, I turn to my network, and I share. I do a little reading. I look for people that have had the same challenges that I've had, trying to learn from them. And then, it's not a diversion. I'm looking for answers, if it were. But I take the time to kind of reflect on the challenge and then kind of see how other people have faced it. And then I kind of move on from there. That tends to help. And again, building that network in the virtual world as well as in the personal world and in the business world has gone a long, long way for me.
As a leader, is there something that your team at Geezeo has heard you say so many times they can finish your sentence?
There's probably a lot of things they don't want to hear me repeat. My big thing is, we're in the relationship business. That's my internal mantra. We are in the relationship. So are credit unions. Vendors are, partners are, and credit unions and community banks are. And, everything we do should be about establishing rapport. Okay. And open dialogue so that when somebody's got a question, somebody's got a problem, because they do arise, they know they can pick up the phone and talk about it. Because ignoring those problems, nothing good happens from that. Time is the enemy when it comes to business struggles, business challenges, or errors or problems. Let's resolve them by having an open dialogue and a trusting relationship.
Communication, right? So important in every aspect of life. When you think back to your early days as a leader in your first kind of management positions, were there mistakes that you made that you mentioned that you work in a mentoring program that you see young leaders make over and over again? Yeah,
I think my biggest mistake when I was younger was not listening enough. I would pay attention, but my mind would race. As a marketer, I'm kind of a type A person. I was always looking for the answer before I fully understood the question. I think that's a real challenge. If I were to look at myself in the rearview mirror, I probably wish I had listened more and paid attention to the details a bit more before I would jump to conclusions. And that comes with, maturity, I think, and age. So it wasn't until I was probably in my late 40s that I kind of figured that out, that I had to, simmer down and really look at all the moving parts and the challenges that are out there before I can make a sound recommendation or a valid recommendation.
I struggle that still myself. I have a friend.
Well, it's because you're type A.
Right. Yeah. I'm always like, let's just talk about I have a friend in Greenville who many people they would say that he speaks slowly and, you're kind of get to the point sometimes. And I said and I've talked about this with other friends. I'm like, what I love about him is he listens fully before he is going to give you his opinion, thoughts, anything. So he's not formulating them as you're talking. And I'm like, I would love to pick up more of that. It's something I remind myself often about. Has there been a piece of advice or a life lesson that you received that you find yourself going back to over and over and over again in your career?
Trying to think of one that really sticks out. I mean, there's probably been several. The ones that I go back to all the time. To me, it's been a matter of, again, it goes back to kind of the listening thing. I worked for this guy, Jack Neary, back in the 80s in the banking world. And he's always told me, start your day educated. Start your morning by kind of scanning the news. Look at it from kind of I think he was ex-military. He said, he always focused on situational awareness. Understand the world you're working in. Take the time in the morning to do that. And I use that today even, not just in the media and seeing what's going on in the industry and even politically or, geopolitically, economically. I'm a news junkie. But I start my morning by looking at, we use Salesforce internally. I do a quick scan of the chatter to see which of our employees are talking to which of our clients and kind of looking for an opportunity to either jump in there and supplement or potentially troubleshoot before trouble arises. And, this guy, that's a life lesson that I learned. Be aware of the situation around you. You're not truly an island. You need to be part of a community. And that served me well, I think.
I understand that one as well. I sometimes have to just shut it all down because I am consumed by it. So as a leader, and I was really looking forward to asking you this question just because of the pace of change in the space that you live in. But how do you make sure not only that your message is staying fresh to your team, but that Geezeo's message is staying fresh to, credit unions and community banks?
Yeah, the number one thing is really listening to the market. I mean, because I am that news junkie and I am doing that kind of that situational scan, or what is known, I guess, as an environmental scan, I'm seeing what the current challenges are that are faced by clients and the industry and or employees. So I'm able to anticipate the need a little better than maybe the average person. But again, it takes time. It takes a dedication. When you're traveling, especially, when you're on the plane, that's when I spend a lot of time reading and seeing what's going on. But to me, the listening part is very important. Listening to what people in the market are saying, be it the influencers or the clients, kind of help you read between the lines. And it gives you this common denominator. It gives you an opportunity to approach the market in a much more relevant manner. Because, if Jill Castillo, let's say at Citizens Bank of Edmonds, is speaking on a topic that's important to her, I can absorb that, listen to it, and then, ping her and get a little deeper into what the real challenge is. And then I can use that in clients, clients that are in the same situation that she's in, be it a bank or a credit union. So that's important to me.
So are you constantly updating the Geezeo message?
It's tweaked. The original message really was focused around, how do we leverage, digital to better engage the audience. Today, the focus is more around enriching. And, when you at first blush, the people think, okay, it's enriched data. We get that. Now it's really enriched data is just a means to get you to an enriched experience. And banks and credit unions want deeper, better, stronger relationships. They want an enriched experience. And that's actually what the member wants as well. They want less friction. They want banking to be less of a chore. They want you to help them figure stuff out. So I don't think we never have radically changed our message in 10 years. It's been a constant evolution. And you need to make sure it stays relevant, of course. I'm not a big believer in taglines that are kind of shocking, that are more built around kind of a current fad. To me, they need to be long-term, enduring terms that resonate for a long period of time.
This is just a question that I have been meaning to ask you since we are friends on all the social channels. You moved recently. What do your new neighbors think of your drone hovering around their homes? And I will tell you that I've thought this for about the past month. I can't wait for it to be golf season since you have the golf course behind you to see you tormenting golfers out there. So,
well, so far so good. Nobody shot me or my drone.
Your drone down.
So I've got it. It's a Mavic Pro 2. This is, it's not a toy. It's a pretty good drone. I'm really into it. I use it as a way to relax. I do not use it intentionally to torment or chase anybody. I haven't had any nasty looks. The good news is where I live in Williamsburg, Virginia, is fairly close to Camp Perry, which is a CIA training camp.
Okay.
So we're used to unidentified flying objects, like spy technology and drones. And there's some bizarre stuff over the skies.
I will tell you that you've had some beautiful shots of your river house in the summer. So
it's safe out there. Out there, it's remote, and there's like scenery and stuff. I am very aware. These are all FAA licensed things. I'm waiting for a knock in the middle of the night.
From the CIA.
A dark Tahoe pulls up and you never hear from me again.
We'll link to the drone that Bryan mentioned so if people want to check it out. If you have a free day, nothing on the calendar, what passions do you have outside of credit unions? What do you do to recharge? I know you have a beautiful family. What does work-life balance look like to you?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time. Both my kids are in school right now, so my wife and I spend a lot of time at this place we call our river house. It's like a big term here on the Lower Chesapeake Bay. It's on the off the Mob Jack Bay of the Lower Chesapeake. I'm a boater, so my perfect day would be spend some time at the river house, fire up my John Deere, spread out some gravel on my 1/4 mile long driveway, which is a huge mistake, and then get out on the boat and have a couple dark and stormies. End the day at the Cowboy Cauldron with my Delta Pilot neighbor and my Dominion Power neighbor. I've become great friends and just sit there and just relax. I mean, that's what it's all about, and we just have the most lively conversations. We're all from different political backgrounds, and it's just refreshing. That's what I enjoy. I'm a workaholic too, though. So, that's a bit of a challenge. I never really disconnect or decompress. So far, no one in the family has given me too much of a hard time about it. So, this is as close as I get, though, is that river house.
It is the river house and working around there. Right? To wrap it up, I want to be respectful of your time. So I'd like to move into part 3, the rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid. Your answers don't have to be. Do you remember the first time you got into trouble? And I'm talking about like memorable trouble.
Well, there's two kinds of trouble. There's the trouble that we create, and there's a trouble that's kind of incidental, that we're victims of. So the first one would be the trouble that was incidental to me. So I was in a seaplane in the Virgin Islands when I was in my teens and coming in for a landing into Charlotte Amalie and St. Thomas. And you've probably seen these Yoder planes being a traveler. And it was the Grumman Goose is what it was called. Kind of like, Fantasy Island, bust the plane. That was the plane. So we're about 30 or 40 feet for our yards from landing in the bay, and the pilot said something really crappy to the co-pilot, something like, "I don't think we're going to make this." And we dipped our left pontoon into a wave, and it tore off the pontoon and tore off the left prop. So that's the first kind of like, holy crap, this isn't good situation.
Was everybody okay? I mean,
everyone was fine. A couple bloody noses. My entire family was in there, including my aunt and my uncle. I think there were 10 passengers, and we were 6 of the 10.
Holy crap, that's insane.
Yeah. And then the other one was a problem I created on my end. It was, typical high school kind of thing. My mother and my father said, "Don't do this," and I did it. And the "don't do this" was like, "Don't go over to Greg's, your friends, in your new Jeep tonight, because, we'd like you to stay home and keep an eye on your sister." So what did I do? My parents were traveling, went over to Greg's, my friend, 7.5 miles away, got over there, couldn't get my Jeep out of reverse. And I was like, oh my God, I got to get home. How am I going to do this? So I decided I'm going to back up 7.5 miles. So off I went, and I'm driving down the road, and there's a car up ahead of me, and I'm like pulling up next to it, and I'm at an intersection. I'm like, I'm just going to have to back up around him. He's in my way. And it was my mother and my father.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So I got busted. I got busted for doing what I wasn't supposed to do. Then I got busted for backing up 7.5 miles, and then I paid the penalty of buying a new transmission.
That is that's a funny story.
Those were the profound.
Yeah, there you go. You love your parents are there, actually. So, do you have any daily routines that if you don't do, your day just feels off? Something you ever?
Yeah, I have to spend the first day, just scanning the emails, scanning Salesforce, scanning the news. I need to feel, again, aware and kind of grounded. And then I end the day kind of the same way, before I go to bed, before I completely decompress. I just do a quick dive into emails and what's going on in social, make sure I see what's going on. So no surprises. I hate surprises.
The random question. What's the best album of all time? The one you can listen to without skipping a song.
I am a huge Hotel California guy. Again, it goes back. Maybe it's that Jeep. It's all about that Jeep and the lifestyle I was living back then. Everything about the Eagles back in the 70s, late 70s was important to me. So that's my favorite one.
I will tell you that that by far is the most popular answer. I think you're the third person to bring that up. So
you're interviewing a bunch of old people.
I was going to say, I bet it's probably similar age range, right? So no, but that's an awesome choice, right? I'm a reader. You've mentioned that you read, obviously scanning Salesforce and emails, and I know how much you read, or you're all over the social channels. Is there a book, kicking it old school, that you've recommended to people over time or gifted to people?
Well, the most recent, I think, is I'm a Tom Peters guy, kind of classic leadership. I don't know if you guys follow him at all on social. He's retired out of Vermont now. He's written a couple of really good ones. The most recent one, I think, is good, and I'd recommend it to anybody that really is, paying attention to what's going on with technology. It's called The Excellence Divide, Meeting the Tech Tide with Work That Wows and Jobs That Last. So it's good for those that are older, that are afraid that technology may push them out, per se. but in fact it won't. We're more in a high tech, high touch world now than we've ever been. And this book will encourage you, I think. It'll also give you an insight into, why technology is something that we constantly need to invest in or reinvest in. But that's a really good book. Highly recommended.
You have added to my list. I have not read that one yet. So the don't send question that I do like to always ask. When you hear the word success, who's the first person that comes to mind?
I would say Bill Gates, and the reason and I'm not a Microsoft guy, I think of it because of the life he's lived. I look at what he did with that company, where he took that company. He knew when to step away from that company. And then from the point of creating the Gates Foundation and doing it, all that he's done for humankind is just remarkable. That to me is success. Success is not about the money you make. It's about the life you live.
I had the opportunity to go have a tour with the Weber marketing guys actually out to the Gates Foundation in Seattle, and it was amazing. I don't want to say the startup approach that they took to that, but it's definitely this is a problem. It doesn't matter how big it is. We can solve it. Let's go do it.
And I think the same as of credit unions. Success is not going to be determined by assets.
Right.
Success is determined by impact. And if whether it's personal or business, it's the impact that you have. And the two do overlap, believe me.
I love that. Success is determined by impact. As you've gotten older, has there become, what has become more important to you, and has anything become less?
Staying calm, being less impulsive, listening more. Again, it goes back to that listening theme. Again, when you're young and aggressive, your mind races, Now it's a matter of listening and digesting, pondering, and then kind of acting. Less impulse, more reflection. We truly become wiser, as most of us, as we get older.
I think that is the perfect place to wrap up. Last question for you. Do you have any final asks or final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I just say, I think it's important that we do recognize that high-tech, high-touch world that we talked about back in the 90s when I got into the credit union space, it's actually happening now. There's no excuse not to do it. Credit unions have, I think, a huge advantage over a lot of financial institutions, and that we do have some branch networks that we can supplement our delivery platforms with. We do have to rethink, our products. We do have to find ways to decommoditize. I think the opportunity's there. And again, it's never been such an exciting time to be in this space. On a more general term, I would say let's all do our best to, stay civil and make sure we're having healthy, respectful dialogue. And, the key to building a collaborative environment is, that engagement and getting out there and establishing our networks and, working with our friends. Collaboration is something that I think the credit union industry should be very proud of.
Bryan, again, I thank you so much for taking the time today to be on the show. We'll link to everything we talked about in the show notes. Is at Clagett on Twitter the preferred way for people to reach out to you if they have additional questions?
Clagett.
We will link to that as well. Everybody can follow you or hit you up if they don't already. Again, thank you very much, Bryan. I've greatly enjoyed this, and I hope you have a fantastic day.
Same with you. Always a pleasure. Thank you.